So, do you guys have a favorite quote?
Favorite
Oh,
quote? Yeah. Yeah,
yeah, I got a quote.
well, definitely got a lot of, throughout what, 7 things this season? Yeah, I got a good amount of quotes.
What's your favorite one?
Hmm. I like the Slumberland, even if she is a pain in the applesauce.
What about you, Crimson?
Yes, I, as Crimson, I chose something from Christmas the Cranks, of all things. Yes.
Make it sound
He's
like you had time to
Peruvian.
plan.
Oh, great, a communist. Oh, I read all my quotes from all
Nice.
7.
Yeah. Mine's for Mr. Smith. The missus and I are working through some domestic issues, and that's regrettable.
Ah,
Uh, Hello everyone. We're back for another recap, another month, another season. This is a
Season
longer season.
4.
yeah, we started the cold open with a question. That's new.
Yeah.
That is new.
That is new and unknown. I don't know. I'm a geeky writer.
I'm Chris Maroon.
And I'm Sprinks.
Yeah, we made it through another season, guys. How do we feel?
Got another one
I
down.
feel
Nice.
yeah, I feel pretty good.
Another
Uh,
7-piece one.
yes, we got the holiday specials. I guess we covered Christmas specials, but nevertheless, it's all right. Gotta cover it up.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll throw out a second question then. We're going right through this. A very safe, easy one. Least favorite character across these 7 things. We've had a few
Is
stinkers
this?
in this season, so
I,
it might be
I,
hard.
I have to ask: is this personal or is this?
Well,
uh,
I think you asked that last time, and I said that both if you got it. I don't know
that's
if I could pick an objectively worse character. I'd have to think on that for a while. But a personal
yeah.
one, pretty easy, I would imagine.
I mean, I'm gonna go with
I'm down to
Mr.
2.
Crank. I don't like him. Like subjectively, I don't like him. It's just
Not a
that we would
fan of
never
Luther
mesh.
Crank.
I'm trying to think. There's no way Luther Crank could be the worst.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah,
I'm down
Oh,
to 2.
yeah. Like I said, Luther Grace is the first one that I'm
No.
going with instinctually here.
Nah,
what
I got
about him?
one's worse.
Makes him the worst.
Personally, I just don't like him. Like, he rubs me the wrong way every scene he's in.
Too much of a
Alright, I guess.
Scrooge.
Yeah, too much of a Scrooge. And don't get me wrong, I'm a fair bit of a Scrooge myself, but I don't like. I'm not an asshole to other people while I'm being a Scrooge. Typically,
And freezes cats and tries to slip up carolers.
to be fair, it's all self-defense in that particular town. But still,
Trespassing. Well, I mean, can't really blame a cat for trespassing.
you got a second one there, Springs.
Well,
Potentially, anyway.
yeah, I was tied, but I think Green from Slumberland is better than Philip the Nutcracker. I just think for a movie, I've already talked about this in the video if you want to go listen to that one or the episode. But for a movie titled The Nutcracker, he did absolute jack shit.
Oh yeah, nothing.
He wasn't even a nutcracker. He
Yeah,
was just a man.
discount John Boyega did nothing.
He was
Sucks.
such
He
a
seems like he seems like a decent actor. He had nothing to work with
yeah.
because they gave him nothing to work with.
It just seemed like, especially for the story of the Nutcracker, he's a pretty big character, and he's
Yeah,
just he's a lackey. I wouldn't even really call him a sidekick. He doesn't do much of anything that's helpful.
yeah. I think I would agree. He's probably my choice for objective. At least that's what I would lean for. I guess for my objective is probably him as well. Like of character I dislike the most.
Yeah, funny enough, Sprinks, I was thinking that as well. Pretty much most characters from the Nutcracker and the Four Realms, there's not really any good characters in it. I'm
Morgan
trying
Freeman.
to
He was a pretty
I
good
mean, he
character.
barely counted as a character in that. We talked about how little he
Yeah.
was
He made a
used.
cameo.
Yeah.
He was a great cameo.
But, yeah, I mean, Keira Knightley's character, was it Sugar Plum or whatever?
The Sugar
She
Plum Fairy. Yeah.
was a character, but even
That is
then,
that is
not
a step
great.
up. You are correct.
And no, was it Meryl Streep? Whatever. The
Helen Mirren.
air quote bad guy, yeah,
Ginger
Helen
Snap.
Mirren, whatever. Ginger Snap. She was so flat. She had so much potential for layers with what they were going for, and they just did not go that route.
No, they did not.
I've been framed. I'm misunderstood. Let me help you.
The pace
It's
in the
over.
movie
That's
was
it.
yeah. The pace in the movie was bad. It felt rushed in the parts that didn't need to be, and then way too lengthy in parts that were boring.
Yep. And then you, in particular, strengths didn't like how a lot of core elements of the Nutcracker weren't utilized. Like you said, the Nutcracker. You didn't like the Rat
I
King
didn't
in
like
this
yeah.
either.
I didn't like the or mouse rinks,
Mouse Ranks.
whatever,
Yeah, Mouse Ranks.
which was just one mouse that kind of had control over the rest. Maybe.
He is the Mouse King.
Boo.
Yeah, I know.
No, there's just it was definitely a different take on the story of the Nutcracker, which is fine, but it wasn't
Can
a
we all
good
agree
one.
it was a bad take?
Yeah, it was a bad take.
I mean, is it too original to be even considered a Nutcracker movie?
No, I think it's a Nutcracker movie. It's got the main named, I'll say named characters, and it's got pretty much the
It's
outline.
probably in the iconography, I think, too, right?
Uh,
The Nutcracker looks the same as far as I remember. Like, there's not much difference in terms of how he looks generally. So that borrows some of the general iconography too. At least I would
so
argue. I
yeah,
don't think it's yeah.
I think
Yeah, I mean, Nutcrackers kind of have a uniform look.
yeah, I think one of the
Really
best
stand
parts
out.
about the movie, which was also talked about in the episode, was it actually having a whole ballet scene, since it's a ballet.
Yeah, I would much rather go see the ballet.
I've seen the ballet. I much rather would see it again.
I haven't, but I probably would. It's not a good film.
So Crimson, you were in agreement that was the Nutcracker was the
Yeah,
lowest.
yeah. Because everybody else is either across everything else didn't really bother me too much. Green would have been a good backup, but even then, she was okay.
I think
She
yeah.
at least served a purpose.
I was thinking
Yeah.
about it, and the ending part with the pearl makes her better than Philip. Or sorry, Philip in the Nutcracker, not Philip from Slumberland.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
Phil Sutherland was the best part of Slumberland. So.
Gotta correct ourselves there.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the obvious follow-up question is that favorite character. Right?
Oh boy. Oh.
A harder question for
That's
sure.
definitely a harder question.
Just swapping one word out. Who knew
I mean,
would
easy for
change
me.
things?
Mel. I'm gonna
No,
go with
then go
Malcolm
ahead.
Reynolds.
Oh,
Malcolm Reynolds would be first. I would probably actually put. Well, okay, just gonna bottle the Firefly cast because, I'm just gonna say Firefly cast, and then I'm gonna put as my number 2 would probably be Philip from Slumberland.
Wow, more than either of the Smiths.
Um,
Felt like you had more love towards them during coverage.
I absolutely do love them. I argue they're more archetypal in nature. I gotta think on that actually. I keep we did so much this season. I'm actually forgetting that we did.
Oh yeah. Well, like
So
last season, as I said, 7,
yeah,
which
there's a lot.
isn't a pattern. Don't necessarily look for 7 each season. It was just we had specials.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to. I don't want to give the same answer of Firefly.
See, neither do I. So that's why I'm looking, and I think I found a different answer.
It's you guys don't necessarily have to give a different answer.
Well, no, but
I
Mal's
mean,
a really good answer. I'm gonna go with
What's the
Will
answer?
from 5 Feet Apart.
I knew it. I knew it was going to be one of the two from 5 Feet. I didn't know which one.
Yeah, to me, Stella was too much of a 180 turn-in character. Will was more gradual. So
Yeah, I agree. We talked in depth about their
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was something we did
slowly
talk in depth
changing.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, from favorite characters from that movie, I agree. Will's probably gonna be my favorite pick as well.
Also, I should probably say this now, while we're going through questions and whatnot. We collectively did not see any comments on any platforms from any of you listening or in the past. So we have nothing to go off of in that regard, in case anyone's curious. Doesn't mean, though, however, if you, in the future, someone, if one of you comments on Doctor Strange or number one, our first episode, it can be brought up in recap in the future.
Yes.
The recaps don't just necessarily pertain, well, for us discussing, not necessarily just pertain to the films or shows watched in said season. It can be covered by questions outside that are brought up.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty open about that as a group, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
nothing to worry about on that end.
In terms of my favorite, I'm gonna have to say Jane from Firefly. I brought it up in Firefly Part 2 we did, that he finally beat Mel for me. So I'll say Jane.
I guess that is true. You're the only one who, I think, in that part, in episodes 8 through 14, yeah, I think you were the only one who stated your favorite character at the end.
This would be a good time for you guys to say yours.
Yeah. I forget what I said in the last recap of 1 through 7. I think I said Wash, maybe? Wash or Mao?
It started as Mel. I don't remember if it
Yeah.
changed.
It has changed. Mine at the end through 8 through 14 after is Simon.
Oh, that was unexpected.
Yeah, mine's pretty much Mel all the way through, just because. But again, lots of attachment to the character, and he's inspired a lot of my own work, in his own way. So I have a lot of attachment to Mel for that reason. So it's kind of hard for me to divorce that right from like being objective. Um, I have a lot of love for Malcolm. Uh, I said I love the whole of the cast. I do think the cast has some weaker links. Like I think Anara's on the weaker end, and I think
Book.
Shepard is underutilized.
Yeah.
I was
Um,
going to say Zoe.
Yeah, and Zoe.
Zoe's kind of just
Yeah,
a yes sir, no sir type person with a little bit of
yeah,
Wash
yeah. Like
relationship.
they're like I said, they're definitely on the lower end like of the cast, but I still think they're well written for what little we have of them. It's just I just wish that again it goes back to their. I wish the show was longer so they were flushed out more.
Yeah.
Um,
Which I do like episode 8, where it showed the backstory of everyone becoming the crew, which is just something I like in shows or whatnot, that it's not episode 1 established of like how they all get together, which it shows how they got book. But in episode 8 with all the flashbacks of how they all got together, I did like that.
Yeah, I
the
like it when
OG
it's not
crew.
front loaded.
Yeah, me too. I think my prime example I go to for like origin episodes is I always go to Teen Titans because I don't think we got an origin episodes for how they all found each other. And I'm talking about the like early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Sure.
good one.
The good one, yeah.
Not
Um,
Titans, the what was that, HBO or whatever show,
Yeah,
not that
yeah,
one.
HBO Max.
yeah. They're that's usually my go-to because I think we didn't get an origin episode until like season 3, if I don't remember, but it was
Yeah,
very
it was
late.
pretty late. Yeah. Sprinks, what about Simon beat Mel? Since you started with Mel.
I the heist episode of the hospital, when it was all going to plan and what Jane was doing was a little off plan, but Simon still stick to the plan until he saw someone in need who was going to die and did that whole badass moment. That's where it kind of took over to me of Simon being better than Mal, because I liked that. I mean, I am a sucker. I'll say this: I am a sucker, as both of you know, for a douchebag character to turn into like the hero. But Simon never was that. He just started kind of like quiet, protecting River. but you took more initiative as it went along and became a little more, not necessarily a leadership role, but more of a importance role. And I just like that more of him.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, like I said, that's probably one of my favorite moments with Simon too. When he, he essentially breaks the plan in order to help save someone's life because that's 100% in character for him. Like he would never willingly sacrifice someone in order to accomplish his goal. And since
Yeah.
he was there and able to help someone, of course he would choose to do that.
But he also doesn't
Um,
just save them and walk away. He then gets up into the other doctor's face and points out the flaws of what he was doing.
yeah, it's like yeah, I agree. I love that scene a lot as well. It's definitely pushed Simon forward when I first watched the show, and it still holds him up for me now. So
Another scene
think
to
my
help. Sorry, another scene to help aid with the Simon thing that I remember is when Simon is talking to Jane when he's paralyzed and kind of gives him a threatening overtone.
yep, it's another good one.
That's what I was gonna bring up. There you go. That I was gonna say that was my favorite Simon scene, was him paralyzing Jane and having that talk. And then River's popping in. I'll kill you with my mind.
Yeah.
Comedic Pete.
Yeah.
So yeah, Simon.
All right. Respect, did you have a question for us?
Do I have a question for you? What's a good question? What to you was the most surprising out of the 7 things we saw in terms of your own ratings? What's something that, whether you did know something about it or nothing at all, at the end of viewing it, surprised you with how you gave it?
That's a good question. Um, hmm,
Unlike season 2, this was not a surprise season for me. I
yeah.
guess maybe 5 feet apart for my objective rating, 7.5. It's not a score I'd give out lightly. I haven't had too many that are 7.5 or higher, I think, in the objective category overall. And that was a movie I wasn't expecting because, no offense, Sprinks, but typically the things you show me aren't objectively the best things in the world.
That's
They're
weird.
usually enjoyable subjectively. So I was expecting like an average, like 6 type deal, but me giving it a high score objectively, that was a little surprising watching it.
Okay. I mean, I think I said it at the end when we saw 5 Feet Apart. I was surprised by your guys' ratings, but I might be
I
mistaken on
think
that.
so.
But
No, I mean, like for that type of story, it fell, I guess, it kind of fell in line with what I expect, I guess, for me. Because obviously I took a big issue with the character change being a 180, being that's where I derive a fair portion of my scale from. So it's a flawed movie, but I still enjoy it. Like I'm not willing to like it's not a movie I'll never watch again. Pretty much, I would watch it again. It's uh yeah, and kind of to kind of expand on that, there wasn't really much that surprised me this season. I expected most of my ratings to be on the more average end just by the listings. And I mind you, I don't watch the trailers for things until we are unless like explicitly we're making decisions of what we're going to watch. So I avoided watching trailers for most of our stuff. So aside from the stuff I had already seen, I went in with as open a mind as possible. I guess I was surprised at how bad the Nutcracker was. Um, but I guess my rating didn't surprise me with it.
yeah, when we were deciding what to choose for our 2 seasonal holiday ones for Christmas, I think we had it down to like 13 total, 13 options.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds about right.
And when the
Sounds
2
about right.
answers got dwindled down to Nutcracker and Cranks, due to the fact, mostly for the fact that both Ryder and Crimson hadn't seen either of them, so they were both new watching experiences, which is why we went with them. I winced because I'd seen both of them, and I
Oh,
went,
you knew.
"Oh, I knew." I went, "Oh man, two not the greatest options."
Maybe next Christmas, if this podcast is still around, we should do like classics, like Jim Carrey's Grinch or something like that.
Oh
Something to
well,
like
one I was
inject some life.
trying to fight with was Muppets Christmas Carol, because Crimson shared that he hadn't seen that one either,
Mhm.
which to
And I
me,
Maybe
had seen
next
that.
year.
good.
Yeah, and I had seen that because you lived with me for a while there.
That's true.
I'll throw it out there that Sinister also didn't see Cranks or Nutcracker as
That's
well.
true.
Was
I was the
also
only one
affected.
who had seen both, and the three of you had seen neither.
Yeah.
So yeah, a
So.
movie about a Nutcracker not being the Nutcracker in a movie, and one about a cult. So
hmm
Ryder, were you surprised that you gave a subjective 2 to anything uh, this season? Were you expecting to go that low on enjoyment at all?
Yeah, I guess that's technically true. I didn't expect it to not enjoy Secret Garden as I did because this style of storytelling, this style of like slow burn character uh, building is typically like something I really love, and I, for the life of me, just did not enjoy this film. Like I don't know why, and I'm still trying to figure out why I don't enjoy it, and I kind of narrowed it down to a couple things. I think while I love the archetype of the story that they're trying to tell, I don't like how it's meshing with other things. So I guess try to think of it like a legitimate example I could provide. Um, okay. The uncle being distant is in isolation. I actually would normally quite enjoy it, but the problem is it's being melded into the story of the other characters where he's not really in focus. So it feels like they didn't do much with him when I'd argue like objectively they still did what they wanted to do with him. So like they did it enough with his character to get the point across, but I don't think there was enough for me to personally invest myself in the uncle. Um, so I guess that one did blindside me. I expected to like it more because of the nature of the story that they were trying to tell. But yeah, I just didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. It's not really outside of the required rewatch that I'm gonna do after I read the book. Don't think I'm gonna go back to it.
at least that version of it, since there's
Yeah, that version of it.
what,
There's several
three or
versions. So
four. Yeah.
I am interested in checking out the other versions because again, this is normally a story that I would be 100% interested in. Like this is my thing. I will take character work over anything normally. So, it's just kind of
Also, a
weird
little
that
outlier.
yeah, this is definitely an outlier for me. I don't deny that. Kind of on that subject, I had finished my second rewatch now, and I did bump the my objective rating up to 6 out of 10. That's from the original 5.5. I think I gave it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it has officially moved up a bit. So there is that.
Sprinks, got an answer for your own question?
I do. I was surprised at how much I actually enjoyed Slumberland for a Netflix original movie that I knew nothing about. I don't think really had the strongest marketing. It kind of just went with Jason Momoa was in it, and that was about it. And overall, it was a quite enjoyable, family-friendly movie. And then later, I also found out from radio stations, it's promoted as a Thanksgiving like holiday movie to watch, and it
What?
has nothing to do like this Thanksgiving season. What watch Netflix's Slumberland, and I went, nothing about this movie is Thanksgiving whatsoever. So that was
Yeah,
just kind of
that's
funny to
that's another
me
one.
of how in my day-to-day life how I saw it being promoted in one way.
hmm
But yeah, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it.
Funny how you were surprised because I wasn't. After watching it, I'm like, Sprinks is gonna like this one, and you did, obviously.
Yeah.
It's got a bit of an adventure to it.
I mean, enjoyed
Uh,
it more than Secret Garden.
Oh, that's very apparent. Yes.
I mean, I'm close with, Ryder when the subjectivity of Secret Garden, mine was a 3.5 to his 2, so fairly close compared to Crimson, your 8. But then again, you said it's a movie you've kind of grown up on, so you have a little
Yeah,
more probably nostalgia.
I can attribute a lot of that to just nostalgia, because I have those outliers too, where I've grown up and I've grown up and no matter how bad other people think the movie is, I still love it.
Well,
I've
Ryder, didn't you have a little bit of that with Firefly?
um yes, trying to think of the specific example you're meaning to bring to me.
I thought when we went over the history at the beginning of Firefly, it was stated
Oh,
like when you were watching when you were younger.
oh yeah, I do have a lot of nostalgic attachments to that, and I maintain that. So that one, that one was a bit harder for me to be objective on, but I still think I did a fairly decent job. But yeah, that was a more difficult one just because of how hard it is to separate the two for me on that one.
Actually, that's a good question to, I guess, memory. Is Firefly the closest all 4 of us, including Sinister, have been close to a rating of pretty much identical?
As in overall,
In
Yeah.
I would,
practical magic, we were all pretty close with the 7s.
yeah. We all gave Mr. and Mrs. Smith an objective 6.5.
And 2 of us gave a 9 for it.
Well,
You were
We were the
subjective,
only one
say, yeah.
off.
Yeah.
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 But for Firefly, it was 7s to 8.5s of the range of objective and subjective.
Okay.
So I meant like an
Yeah,
overall close number.
I think you're right. We did. I think that is the good job on the show, I guess. But yeah, I think you're right about that.
Okay.
Well, you tried to maneuver around the rating question, didn't you, there, Sprinks?
The rating question of what?
Our average surprise rating stuff made it more specific to our individuals, which is good variation.
I thought that's what
Um,
the question originally was, a rating we gave that was surprising.
no, not as an individual. It's never been individual rating.
Oh, okay.
Anyways,
So okay,
it's
what
fine.
you mean is a one from someone else that's surprising.
Yeah, that's how it's been.
Oh,
But I like the writing. It's good that you did that. But I did have a specific question for you, though. So hopefully you prepped a little bit. I brought it up to you a few days ago.
I think I know this question, and I have not prepped. So I will try my hardest.
All right. So, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you gave an objective 6.5, which we all did. We were covered on that part. But my question is why that got a 6.5 and Halloween Town got a 7.5, initially an 8 from you. What did that
Yes,
do better?
I
Actually,
knew.
I have a sort of sorry. Before you go off on this, I actually have a preceding question potentially. That might help me understand a little bit more. And it might balance things out a little bit better. So, this is just gonna be you can shoot this one down, Crimson. Or, sorry, Springs to move right past it. But this is kind of a, I guess, setup. Um, Last recap, we kind of got you to agree more or less that uh, your love for Michael Giacchino was subjective, and you ended up giving Lightyear a full extra point for that. So I guess my question now is, would you be willing to move your objective rating down that you've agreed that that's more subjective?
For
From
Lightyear?
Yeah, from an 8 to a 7?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to get that out. All right, sorry, take it away.
Nope, that was a valid question. Um, okay, for Mr. and Mrs. Smith versus Halloween Town in how I saw the objective scale, which as we already stated, you did say I mean I did say originally it was an 8, then 7.5, so all in all, it's a 1 point difference, 6.5 to 7.5 of Mr. and Mrs. Smith Halloween Town. To me, one of the big implements to go off of for both movies is they have to be treated as such with the production that they both have. Mr. and Mrs. Smith is unfortunately, I don't have, I was not prepped really, but Mr. and Mrs. Smith has to my knowledge, a higher budget, a more film oriented set, studio lighting, um, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Not caretakers, but assistants, um, all that like in the
It
background.
had the larger film
Yeah,
crew,
it
pretty
had
much.
the full film crew. Halloween Town, I'm not saying didn't have a full film crew, but it was a Disney Channel original movie with a budget that was probably far less and could only work with the, you know, the I guess realm or the background of a a movie made for television. I guess if that helps, because if it was just a Disney movie, I'm sure it would be bigger because of a theatrical release and all the, probably a bigger film crew, but it was made for TV, so it was kind of all they really had at hand. But that's not regarding both of like, oh, this one didn't and this one did. It's they have to be rated for what they had. So because Halloween Town is looking at it a lesser quality of a film, it is because of what they had to make it such compared to Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So I think with what it had, it did it better with the equipment it used in how it got a TV movie across than Mr. and Mrs. Smith in the objective range.
So, okay, that clears it up a little bit. Now I'm going to
I
ask,
get
I guess, like a quantifier a little bit, where typically for writing, the most usually goes 2 points, and like as a knock, if it's bad writing, it's usually your max. And then other elements are about a point, half point, depending on severity of it. So this budget issue, how's that weighed point wise typically in your book?
Point wise, it's difficult because the comparison of a movie would have to be, I think, on as equal grounds as it can be. So I would say same genre would help, and time period it came out would help. So if like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I forget what year it came out, but early 2000s is my best guess. So
I think 2005.
2005, I would say it would be easiest to judge it on a movie between 2004 and 2006 that are action. That would help in the range of those two objectively looking the same. The budget could, definitely be different in both of like regards of like, wow, they had absolutely no lighting at all, like that they didn't put any funds into it versus another. But if, for example, 2005 to now 2022, an action movie, the differences in technology advanced and everything that has been changed in the film production in those years would definitely be a difference to be shown through visuals. So it would be judged on the time. So Halloween Town, I also forget what year that came out, but it would be judged on the time, but for the time of television movies, because television movies now also same process of technological advances and probably more than likely different maneuvers and whatnot in the film crew setup to go about things.
I guess I have I guess an interesting question to kind of gauge this. So, do you adjust your objective scale? Like, okay, so actually that's the wrong question. Do you apply a different objective scale to different movies? So, like, the budget matters more for say for Mr. Smith, um, but so therefore that does play a bit of a factor. Whereas in Halloween Town it plays less of a factor because of its low production value, essentially. So are you using two different scales, or are you trying to? Um,
Over Overall, writer, I'm gonna say leaning more to no,
okay.
because it's not I'm not comparing to another movie. Like the thing was not to compare Mr. and Mrs. Smith to Halloween Town while I was watching Halloween Town, or vice versa.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I,
but
I know
it's
that's not
also
the
not taking
goal.
like
Yeah.
Halloween Town and comparing it to like Air Bud, which I think was a Disney original television movie or something, or better yet, Luck of the Irish. I know that was a TV movie. Like, I'm not comparing those two together because of the comparison of time period that came out, budget that came out, whatever. I'm judging the objective for it for what it had on hand at the time it was made.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess
So I
like
understand the
Wizard
whole
of
budget stuff.
Oz, for example, like Wizard of Oz. I don't know if Wizard of Oz can compare to anything to now. So like Avengers Endgame and Wizard of Oz comparison, that is for me. That would probably be extremely hard to compare objectively because 1939 to 2000. When did Endgame come out? 2019, I think.
Yes.
That sounds about
1918.
right. It
Comparing
was
those
like
two
just
is,
before the whole COVID thing. So.
yeah, that's just like a gargantuan amount of years,
Mhm.
comparing the two in filmmaking. So like that to me objectively, how I see the camera work, how I see the lighting, the sets, it would be far different. So because we don't compare two movies in an episode and it's just on the whatever subject we're on of the movie or
Mhm.
show, it's solely for that. But my objective is still for the time period and what they had on hand or what they have to use for it. For like Mr. Incorporated, for example, that wasn't a film set, or it was still a production team, but it was it was a fan made group of fan funded and raised money to create what they could create based off of Riverdale, Supernatural, what have you. But it was,
Mhm.
I wouldn't say amateur, but it definitely was not, you know, a seasoned cinematographer or a high class well known director with past works, or maybe they did and I just
That
not familiar with any of them.
they did.
They did, okay, they did.
They did an interview with the director.
But something in regards to that I think is judged for me objectively to that.
So you try to find things that are well. We kind of actually brought this up earlier. You try to compare things to like their similar vein. So you compare TV made movies to other TV made movies, and you would rather compare. I guess okay. So I guess my example is you would rather compare the original 2D animated Beauty and the Beast to another
Hercules.
2D animated Disney movie
Yeah.
rather than like Frozen because that's in a different genre of entirely. Where you
Yes.
would much rather compare Frozen to something in Pixar.
Or Frozen to Tangled, but yes.
Okay.
It would be easier to judge them on the time period and equipment at hand, especially if they're both very similar. For example, Tangled and Frozen, both Disney animated films around the same time period, that kind of thing.
I guess last thing, because I don't want to really too much. I understand the whole budget thing. I think that makes sense for what I understand of you. The thing I still don't fully get, because like you said, it's for comparing two things. It wasn't necessarily taken into account during the individual movies. Is knowing your point system. Like I said, usually writing at worst is 2 points off, and so on. I'm curious why Mr. Mrs. Smith is a 6.5 because all we really talked about
One
negatives was writing.
one
You didn't
thing
really
I
point out
guess that
anything
can
else.
aid in the point difference right now that comes to mind that can help is the knowledge of Halloween Town and how it shows the world of Halloween Town. And it didn't really speculate on like how a bus can really fly and go through portals to get there or whatever, but the world of Halloween Town and how it's explained of the monsters and what happens on Halloween and the grandma witch and all that, to me, is a more understanding world and everything than compared to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where the agencies aren't really fleshed out, don't really know much of the backstory. They're just kind of there with these two agents because the story is of the two agents. It's not about the agencies. But in Halloween Town, it's about the kids and the kids escaping everything, but the world is still shown of how it acts. You could argue the agency does show how, it gives out contracts to go do things, but it was also an element of Mr. and Mrs. Smith where, as we said, it was kind of a movie I saw differently than you in how it was turned for them to kill each other, but still the agencies working with one another if they were. Who's the higher up? It has Keith David's simply for a voice, and more could have been on him for Mrs. Smith's agency. I just think there's more to the world that was not shown that could have been shown to make it stronger compared to Halloween Town in that regard.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sure I would have
So
a lot more to talk about in comparisons between the two if it wasn't such a close point of 6.5 to 7.5. I'm sure if it was a movie that, for example, with Secret Garden between you two of a 2 to 8, even though that's subjective, but an example of a 2 to 8, I'm sure I would have a lot more passion and drive behind to explain my reasoning between them.
yeah. Okay. It's okay. So this is specifically world being shown. So this is I'm trying to differentiate here. So see, for that, all of that falls under world building for me, which is the same category, but you're differentiating the two in that, because that falls under the category of writing to me. But on your scale, writing only takes away 2 points, so you're classifying world building as something else. This is different. This is separated because
Well, it could fall into
um
writing because if it was a written scene showing more, that would be for the writing. Because the writing is always, at least to my knowledge, the writing is the first thing shown to pitch to a movie in order to get the movie to even go, or show, or what have you. So if it was written in to make a scene, then I guess that's writing. But if it was a directorial choice after that was written on the spot to get in, that's kind of harder to judge unless it's a fact that's known beforehand. So I'm going to definitely lean more on the writing aspect. So the fact that it wasn't shown more is in writing, if that helps. But I know,
okay,
writer, for you, it comes to what is shown is all we can go off of.
no, no, okay. So no, sorry, you misunderstood my question. I'm asking more about the point deficit. So as Crimson says up, typically when something's badly written but it has other aspects that's good, typically you just take away 2 points in writing. The reason that I'm confused is because most of what you described falls under writing to me. So I'm wondering where that deficit comes from then. Because if that is incorporated into the lack of writing, then your rating would still be higher. That's why I'm asking the clarifying question.
It would be higher for Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you're saying? If my problem with the agency is the
No, like
writing?
I said, yes, because that's what I'm saying. I incorporate what you said into my writing as world building, but I want to know if you differentiate that, separated from your writing rating. So like you have
Oh,
general
I see.
writing, you have your world building. Yeah, I'm confused about that because that would be incorporated into your 2 points that you would normally take away.
I see what you
That's what I
mean.
would have assumed. Yeah, sorry.
No, it would be incorporated with the writing. It would not be I don't have 4 separate writings of world, character, end,
Okay.
beginning. It's just all in one.
That's kind of where my confusion lies with this object objective score 6.5, because like Ryder just said, all of your gripes with the world building and the agencies not having much of a presence or understanding of the world would fit under writing, which would typically 2 points. But you gave it a 6.5. So what other elements of filmmaking did you dock it for, like lighting, etc.? Usually dock for other
Okay,
things.
I'm sure
You complimented the costume
I
design,
did. The
complimented
whole white
pretty
and
much
black
everything
aspect.
else except the world building during our coverage of it.
In our coverage, I mean, Crimson, it seems you went back and listened. In the coverage of it, is that
I
the
did.
only thing I've said that was against it?
Um,
Because I did
yes.
not go back. I
We
did not
talked
think.
about one bad CG explosion. Your main problem was the police, which would fall under writing. Um, you liked the acting. Everything else you didn't really say negatively about, which is why I was confused with the 6.5.
Well, off the top of my head, I can also go with camera work because there was camera work that was. It was. It would definitely be docked a little for the scene. To me, it was good to use multiple different forms of Steadicam, tracking cam, Dutch angle on the stairs, shaky cam in the car chase in the van. So multiple ways of camera work were used, but in a said scene, it was the only camera work that was used in a scene. So, example, the car chase was only shaky cam, or as some put it, handheld, in the entirety of the scene, compared to a dash cam or a tracking shot or bird's eye view shot of the cars, which to me did not give it much creativity and usage that it could have. Then again, this is just camera work of the cinematographer at hand or director of photography who used it, and director's point of what they wanted. But to me, it could have been stronger. The whole shooting part in the house right after she drops the wine, it was a lot of pan shots and just single still shots. And to me, I think it would have been more creative and used if it was tracking bullet, if it was more transitional pieces of like going through a wall or dropping a bookcase or something. So the cinematography in that regard would be a little lower to me because of the creativity used for it, in my opinion, of what I think would have been better or how it could have come across better. So that's another point to it. Not a full point. I mean point as in like another like tally to go on of, not an actual like -1 to the score. That's what I mean.
Like you just said, in your opinion, though, wouldn't that be subjective?
No. My objective scale does not match anyone else's but my own of how I see stuff.
Well, I guess good more in depth because you didn't talk about the camera during the podcast.
During the episode, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm done on that.
Okay.
Someone else got questions?
I
Hopefully that
got
clears up all the audience as well who are, confused and were
yeah.
blown away as much as Ryder was when, these things.
Yeah. No, it's good. I potentially have one. This is mostly gonna be directed at Crimson, but Sprinks, you are kind of involved with it, so feel free to jump in.
Okay.
I'm confused on how you define forced relationships. Obviously this came up during Firefly. This is obviously the big progenitor of what I've been sitting on, I guess, for the past couple days. You guys, I don't even remember his name. That tells you what I think of his character.
Tracy.
You got Tracy. You guys found Kaylee's and Tracy's relationship to be forced within the context of the episode. I don't. I never got to spit out why because we kind of moved on. I'll give a brief summary and then I'm gonna turn it back to you guys because I think what I'm confused about is how you guys define forced relationships. So forced to me generally means there's no build up to something. And that they're simply together to be together. Like there was no setup or anything to quantify that. Whereas in this case, I found it to be relatively set up. I think the most egregious aspect of this is I will immediately give to you guys as a point is that she is listening to the recording when it's obviously Mel and Zoe would have the recording of Tracy. I agree, 100%. That's a bit contrived. I think from that point on, though, I do believe there is enough to I do believe there is enough to kind of prove that it's not forced, or at least from my perspective. So, for example, Mal ordering Kaylee to stay with Tracy. Literally, the previous episode, we praised him for delegating crew during times of crisis. In this scene, Serenity's getting shot at, so I will apply this to times of crisis. So he sent the friendliest face of his crew to watch the most, someone he cares about, but who's also a little unstable. So Kaylee, in this case, would be a very good grounding mechanism. So I don't see that as forced. I found that to be in character as a decision that Mal would make in order to allow or to facilitate the situation in which they would have a conversation. I also typically, when I describe something as forced, I don't. There typically needs to be a through line, so like they would have had to have gotten together in order for me to agree that it was forced because then it had reached a point where there wasn't build up to it. So I guess I want to hear how you guys define forced relationships when we're talking about something in the context of writing, because I didn't understand when we were covering Firefly. This confused me, and this will. I'm gonna warn you now, Crimson. It will probably inevitably go back to the Bat and the Cat from the Batman. So
Crimson,
it will inevitably go back to that.
I'll let you go over since Ryder kind of put this on you.
Yeah.
But before, I'll just point out this is in regards to Firefly episode 12. In case anyone didn't listen to
and
the
in case
Firefly
anyone's
episode.
getting confusing.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't really have a textbook definition of a forced relationship. It's kind of a case by case.
Yeah.
But
No,
I mostly agree with your definition that you provided. But in terms of your example of Tracy, and the forcedness of Tracy,
the reason I said it is
Mal-
because you guys said it, so that's why I was.
Yeah. So I'm elaborating. So you saying Mal sending him and Kaylee away makes sense for Malcolm to compartmentalize where people go. I don't know why they were the only two kicked out of the bridge, essentially. Everyone else was together to strategize. I don't know why he felt they needed to leave. To me, it felt like they did that so they could have a moment of one-on-one. Could you explain why he would need them to leave?
Well, he's the one that's being stressed out about it, and typically you don't want someone. I'm talking about Tracy. Tracy is the one being stressed at the fact that they're being chased. Speaking from experience, when someone is extremely stressed out, you don't want them in the planning room with you, and so I'm content with him being sent away. And being that he's unstable, but he wants someone to watch over him, I think Kaylee is a good choice.
I'm trying because, like you kind of said, he's a little unstable. So wouldn't you want more of a bodyguard than a therapist with him? Wouldn't Jane be good?
Well, at this point, him being unstable is he's not exactly threatening them. He's unstable in the sense of like they've been apart, but it's still him. Like he was following their orders in the med bay when he asked them to calm down. As soon as he called out his rank and name, like in his sergeant voice, he immediately came to attention to a degree. So that's still instilled into him to enough to where I think Mal would buy that he's not unstable to the point of putting other people in danger yet. But he would buy that there's clearly a level of discomfort. So I think Kaylee is still a good choice. I don't know if Kaylee's the best choice because Book might have been a good choice. But Kaylee was there. I don't remember Book being in the room. Oh, Book was
He was
the one
there.
stalling.
He was
Yeah,
kind of important
stalling.
for strategizing.
He was stalling. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess for forced relationships, it's when I see the writer's intent, which technically everything's writer's intent, but when I see more writer intent than character motivation, like you said,
Okay.
Mal putting him away, and your explanation can make sense. But even if I go with it, I feel like it's still more of the writer than Mal. In that specific example, with when Tracy woke up and he saw Kaylee and his heartbeat went faster while looking at her, and she was kind of like dumbfounded by him, and the whole recording thing, as you mentioned, you gave us a point for.
Yeah, I'm not gonna like argue against that because that was very contrived. But I will also say it facilitates why Kaylee is willing to talk to him. So that
fine with
one
characters
is
interacting, but
yeah,
they
that
weren't
to me
going
was
with a cordial conversation thing. They were going for a interested vibe because Kaylee and Simon had a fight at the beginning of this episode, so they're trying to introduce a little drama with potential Simon jealousy or Kaylee just exploring other options since Simon's not
A love triangle.
advancing. Yeah, so I just see more writer intent than character motivation in this, which is probably my biggest issue when it comes to forced stuff.
okay.
And I'll
And
That
touch on
clears
it.
it up.
Yeah,
for
I'll
you
touch
in my POV.
just a little on it. I think I brought it up in the episode, but I may be mistaken. When Tracy and Kaylee were told to leave the bridge, I think it would have been a safer and safer is in a more understanding for them to wait out in the kitchen dining area for the Mal or someone to come get them rather than to go down the ladder into Kaylee's room simply for a more setting
An
view.
intimate setting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would prefer them going to the mess hall. Okay, that's pretty much my. I just wanted to get more, I guess, from you guys on that because, um, yeah, I don't know. Relationships are is also a case by case basis for me typically.
Mhm.
We can probably broaden out this topic a bit if we wanted. So what I like in on screen relationships, I prefer the like slow burn. You spend a lot of time with these two characters um and they complement each other, like they make up for each other's weaknesses and vulnerabilities to a degree, but they still have an element of similarity. I prefer the very, very complicated, intricate relationships, but I don't necessarily need that. uh I guess uh so I guess I'm curious, how do you what do you look for in a quote unquote good on-screen relationship?
Something I
Um,
like is the gradual flip turn that sometimes the cheesy way in my example I was thinking is like when the guy or girl is going to meet up with the vice versa and they see them with a simple misunderstanding of maybe kissing a different person or leaving said area or doing whatever and the person we're following sees it and goes, "Oh no, I'm a fool," kind of thing. That's the cheesy way, but I like a little more gradual of learning someone's intentions are slightly scuffed and slightly off, and then they learn about it, and then they have a normally a heated conversation of the reasoning behind it and try to explain, which gives a thought on both of is this worth it? I like that.
Mhm. Fair enough. Yeah, like no judgment on cheesy stuff because I'm 100% for cheese once like if it's earned, I will absolutely accept cheese in all forms. um, yeah, any
for
addition
me,
comes in.
I
Yeah.
I can't quantify it because to me it's more of a feeling, and this could be more towards actors than writers in a lot of
Mhm.
regards because you want to feel like there's a connection, so that's usually chemistry between actors. Because even a poorly written romantic relationship can be carried by actors. Um, so it just boils down to a feeling. Does this feel believable? Um, is that
Well,
even if it's written poorly, actors can make it feel like a real relationship.
I
Right?
mean,
So
I guess my only counter to this that's obvious would be the Rise of Skywalker. Uh, Rey and Kylo did a great job. It's,
yeah, I
there's
disagree.
not.
I didn't think their acting was good during that. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't get the feeling off of it. I guess because
I
I watch a
got a
lot of.
feeling, but it was more hatred towards the writers than.
Oh, that was definitely there. I watch a lot of procedurals, which are a lot of one-off episodes. So writers kind of have to get through relationships quick if there are relationships in one-offs. So they're generally pretty fine with me if they're basic or corny or whatever, cheesy. That's what I said. It, yeah, it's just a vibe, I guess. If it's believable, it's fine. I don't know. Sorry,
All
I
right.
can't really be more specific than anything.
Okay. Yeah. I was just curious. But that was my big question of the day. So.
Good big question.
We got any other basic ones? Check the list here.
Well, we did favorite character, least favorite character, a surprised rating.
All right.
How do we think the season went
That's
overall?
usually the last question. I think for me, this did not top last season. I think previous season was better for me, season 3, and maybe season 2. But overall, in terms of conversations, I think we had some good stuff. I liked 5 Feet Apart, talking about character relationships in that. Speaking of relationships, Firefly was great. We didn't have too much deep talk because we were kind of rushing through it.
We were running through that one.
Had a lot to cover. But overall, yeah, a decent season. I don't think it's our best, but it was still fun.
Yeah, in terms of like movies I didn't like, I think season 1 is still my least favorite. In terms of movies I didn't like, discussions were great. It was a good opener. I guess for this season, I'm in between all the stresses of my outside life. I felt a lot more stressed out about this season, so that affects my view on it. um, but I think overall it was okay. I'm probably in agreement that was a weaker season in terms of, I guess, enjoyment for me. But I don't think that necessarily overrides our commentary. I think we did a great job.
I am also in agreement. I thought this was an okay season. What I do like about it for me is I had high movies that I thought were pretty good, and I saw some stuff that I didn't think were very good. So it had some range in how I saw things. I think the biggest thing to me that was kind of downside is both holiday choices were lower movies
Yeah.
or lower grade movies.
Well,
I think that's kind of the lower. I mean, it's still good to have, especially since 3 of us never saw them before, and it was a good thing to just talk about. But when it's all four in agreement of something, it doesn't really drive the conversations really far. For example, like Blair Witch, the ending of that was a 2v2 situation where it really went on. But for these, it was kind of all ingredients. It's like, yeah, it's a cult. They're crazy Christmas people. On moving on, kind of thing. So
yeah. uh, Fair enough. Yeah.
I guess I have one last question that I just thought would be good. Um, since we talked a lot about characters, might as well add on a little bit more. Favorite 2 character interaction?
ooh,
Ooh.
Doesn't have to be a specific scene, just how the 2 characters interact with each other overall.
See, the scene that jumped into my head first was Jane and Simon in the medical room. Um, when Jane is paralyzed and Simon's being threatening to a degree, but still promising, so I will do the work and take care of you, that kind of thing. That was the first thing that jumped into my head. I'll try to think of another.
unfortunately, mine might also be Firefly in episode 9 of Mal and Jane when Jane's in the airlock.
Ooh, that's another good one.
Um,
No shame in picking Firefly. The characters are great and they bounce off each other.
I was talking more like character dynamic as a whole, less scene specific, but
Ah,
because you could have one good scene, but the rest of their interactions suck.
Oh,
I don't. Uh,
okay.
best 2 character
Nemo and Flip.
dynamics. That's
I think,
Nemo and Flip.
yeah, every interaction of like Nemo and Flip throughout the movie was pretty good to me. I like their dynamic, and then how Nemo kind of leaned more into liking him, and Flip leaned more into liking her, opposed to when they first interacted. And yeah,
favorite dynamic. It's very episodic, the dynamics in Firefly. So like it changes every episode, like the focus of the dynamics of the characters. Like the characters don't change, but the focus on dynamic is usually
Mhm.
shifted a little bit. Um
it's actually interesting. A lot of these choices we have here are 2 characters: Nemo and Flip, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the girl and her cousin, Stella and Will. Firefly is that's a hard one.
That's a
I mean,
hard
that's a
one.
lot.
Firefly's an ensemble. Firefly's an ensemble.
Yeah, you got Mr. and Mrs. Crank, and then I guess the strongest one would be Clara and the Sugar Plum Fairy.
Very
bit.
dynamic. Yeah. I guess. Yeah, it's kind of hard to pick out a dynamic in Firefly because of the ensemble focus. So I'm gonna go with Mr. and Smith is Smith. I think as
Alright.
my favorite dynamic.
Yeah, I might throw that's a surprise one of Stella and Will. I think they had a decent dynamic, even though there were a lot of moments of it not being believable and character turns. But they had good chemistry between each other, and overall pretty good, I think. And I agree with Firefly. It's kind of hard. Like Mal's relationship with Jane is all over the place.
Yeah, like I said, it's spread out, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
Well, they all make
Apologies.
sense.
Yeah, you
They
meant
just
as in a
change.
whole, not just in one
Yeah.
scene.
yeah.
That was my last question.
All right.
Ryder, you got any
uh,
last questions?
No, I believe that's it. I'll read us out unless you got any last things for us, Springs.
I don't think so. I think the choices again this season were good variety. Are because unfortunately Sinister isn't around as much as he used to. Slumberland as a kind of newer pick to fill in that gap, I think was a good idea. Yeah. Firefly is, I mean, our first show compared to Obi-Wan and Miss Marvel. That was a two-parter because of the length. Yeah, it was a good. I like the differences and I like the variety that are in each season.
Yeah, I'm happy you finished Firefly and liked it. That's what matters most.
Yeah, that's true. That I'm happy about.
Yes.
That was the one I was worried most about. Yeah. All right. Well, as always, you can find us on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, Amazon, Pocket Cast, Castbox, and YouTube, which is our visual medium. Yeah. Please feel free to like and comment and follow us and shout at us when we get something wrong, or praise us if you agree with us.
Material for the
Whichever one floats your boat.
recaps. That's what we want.
Yeah. Whatever floats your boat. As always, I've been a geeky writer.
I'm Crimson Rune, here to weather the storm with you next season.
Oh my gosh, and I'm Sprinks.
Yeah, here I am dreaming of serenity. All right, boys. We will see you next season, everybody.
Bye.
Later.
Toodaloo.